The way I dress now is nothing like the style I was trying to emulate when I first started getting into fashion about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I wanted to go through and talk about the pitfalls and mistakes I made while trying to get here because I think everyone sort of has to go through this journey ultimately. You have to make mistakes and try things on to know what does and doesn't fit. But I think if I explain a couple of things that may happen to you along this path, you can avoid them sooner, you can recognize when they're happening to you, and course correct quickly. So if you're not happy with how you dress now, or you just want to evolve or mature your style a little bit, I would think of this as a negotiation between who you are and who you want to be. And some things in a negotiation are rock solid. There are some things you will not budge on, you cannot change, they have to exist. And some things there's a little bit more wiggle room on, right? So you have to look through the terms of the negotiation and sort of, you can write this down yourself, you sort of think really hard about what things in your life you can and cannot change, that you're willing to change or you're not willing to change. Hopefully, you guys are a little bit more self aware or accepting of yourself than I was because when it came to me, I had to really try to change myself and then see it not work before I could accept the things about myself that were unchangeable. So, you have some concrete examples. I'm going to start with when I started using TikTok in 2020. In 2020, before the pandemic hit, I was 25. I had my first salaried job and I had been thrifting my wardrobe for years and years and years, like since high school. So I had a very specific way of getting my clothes. I did like dressing myself in a particular style, but I wasn't that picky. I wasn't thinking about it that much. There are two things I tried to do between 2020 and 2021. I tried my hand at a couple more feminine styles and I wanted to edge it up a little bit. If you guys remember like the vibe and makeup of TikTok at that time, it was very emo. Everybody was doing that like white under tight line eyeliner, whatever it's called. And there was the colored lights in the corners of the bedroom. And yeah, it was just like a very kind of angsty time. And I didn't get on TikTok thinking I was going to become any sort of fashion influencer. In fact, I got on just as a consumer. I was just very, very easily influenced at this time, and it's really hard to tell people not to be easily influenced. Like, I think some people have this 6-month rule now, which I think is probably pretty helpful, but it's essentially that if you want to buy something, you wait 6 months to buy it, and if you still want it after 6 months, then you can buy it. I think some people do the same thing where they wait like 2 years before they buy something. Putting some sort of time lock on purchases is not a bad way to go, but I bought like something crazy, like an $800 pair of New Rock platforms, which I thankfully resold and practically didn't lose any money, but it was just like totally, totally not my style to be like punk rock. If you guys know me now, you can tell that imagine me trying to be punk rock. It wasn't natural and it wasn't happening. Now, a thing to keep in mind is I was interested in many different styles and many different subcultures at this time, and it did sort of feel like a battle to see which one would win out. So I was interested and vocally interested in normcore, in what normal people wear, quote unquote, and the subtleties of that. I was interested in menswear. I was interested in tailoring and menswear. I was interested in streetwear. I was interested in people who were wearing really cool, baggy outfits, big sort of rockaware style jeans, sneakers, baggy t-shirts. And I was interested in this more feminine sort of 2000s look. So all these things were sort of percolating around me at the same time. And I would sort of do one style and then be like, this is not quite it. And then I would do another style and be like, this is not quite it. And everything just felt a little half-baked. Now, if you're going to do a sort of slapdash experimental phase like I had, there are a couple things to keep in mind. For me, it was kind of helpful because it was the pandemic and I was home. Like, no one was really seeing any of my outfits, so I was able to play around with stuff and kind of just post it online and not actually have to wear it outside. There are two issues with that. One was I bought a couple mini skirts or like even a corset. Remember when corsets were really popular? I tried on a corset that I got from Etsy. So I was trying all this stuff on at home. I was working from home. I actually didn't have to go out and wear these clothes, which was good for me because I didn't actually feel comfortable wearing those clothes, but it was bad because it didn't forced me to accept the fact that I didn't actually feel comfortable wearing those clothes. So it's obviously fun to play dress up in your room, but if you don't feel good wearing these clothes out of the house, like that is a glaring red flag. Something about myself is that I don't love sticking out. I think a lot of fashion people, and to their credit, love making a statement, love having eyes on them, love looking different. That's actually not quite to my taste. And so there are a couple of hard rules that I came out of this period with. I don't like overly feminine clothing. I never did. I didn't for my whole childhood. I didn't when I was in my mid-20s. I don't now. Every now and then, I think I give it a try just because you never sort of lose that little voice telling you, you should be like this. This is how you're pretty. This is how people look pretty. This is how people get approval. This is how people get attention. You know, it's hard to lose that voice. And I hadn't quite given it up at that point. I think I'm getting closer every day, but it's a tough habit to kick. I tried very, very briefly to get into makeup at that point too. I was just like so not good at it. And as I said before, I have a very low tolerance and low interest in watching tutorials, and you really have to watch tutorials to get into makeup. And I think I refused to and just essentially tried it all myself, and it didn't work. But one of the biggest things I came away with, especially if you feel like you can be easily influenced by what you see online and you can't quite tell what's authentic or what's going to last you in the long run versus what's just, being sold to you, is you have to be really honest with yourself about your shopping habits. And what I mean by this is I don't really buy clothes firsthand. I buy clothes firsthand very, very rarely, a couple times a year, maybe. Most of my clothing is secondhand. And there's actually a couple reasons for that, and they're important too. One is because I'm cheap. Overall, I prefer saving my money over spending it on clothes. And you think like, yes, obviously people should save their money and not spend it on clothes. But a lot of the people you see online, you have to remember this. A lot of the people you see online are either rich from family money or their job or their partner or whatever it is, or they spend all their money on clothes. They're in credit card debt. They don't have any savings. They spend their money on clothes. This is not a moral issue. I'm not saying it's horrible that they spend all their money on clothes, but you have to be really honest with yourself. Are you going to spend all your money on clothes? Do you want to buy the hottest, best, newest thing that comes at a high price point and might not be the best quality? Maybe you are that type of person. And then, yeah, you can play that game, right? You can have the hottest item. You can buy the fancy new thing. But essentially what I had done to myself is I had stuck myself in this weird loop of like shame where I was like, I never look like the people online. They look so cool. Their clothes just look so hip, so current. Of course my clothes weren't going to look like that. I buy everything at the thrift store, at the vintage store, off of eBay, off of Etsy. Like, inherently, my clothes were not going to look like that. They just weren't. And so I think I was confused. I was either confused about myself or I was confused about the reality of what I was seeing online, which is that people were buying new clothes and they were buying new clothes all the time. And I just wasn't willing to do that. And my closet was 90% made up of things that were not that. So just to wrap that up, because I think this is an important point, if you don't like to spend a lot of money on clothes, if you buy a lot of your clothes secondhand, make sure that the people you are looking at online, whose styles you want to emulate, are doing that too, because you're just not going to compete with the archive fashion bros or the people that are going into a store and buying the nicest, cleanest, crispest, most crisp thing. There's a certain crispness to new clothes, you know what I mean? Like, my clothes don't generally have that. This shirt actually is new, but I was gifted it from Cotton. So, and they didn't tell me to say that, but anyway, that's why there's like a crispness to this. These jeans I'm wearing, girl, they've been through the mill. Like, they are not looking crisp. There's a difference. So anyway, I highly suggest you do this. I didn't do it at the time, but it's not a bad idea to write down what you think your constraints are. You have a certain budget, you buy clothes secondhand, you don't like to wear overly feminine things, you don't like to wear things that are body conscious. Those were things like hard lines for me in this negotiation, right? The negotiation between myself and who I wanted to be. and I would try a thing and it just wouldn't work, and I would try to force myself to do it and it wouldn't work. Anyway, from that point, I sort of started expanding my interest into people that were a little bit more high fashion. There were two kind of camps to that. There were people who were shopping secondhand, but they were buying like again a lot more archive designer stuff. And then there were people that were maybe not necessarily buying secondhand, but had really like crisp, clean, minimal looks. Again, a lot of trial and error for me. The crisp, clean, minimal thing, it didn't work because I was just like always adding an extra thing. Well, there's a couple reasons why I think a minimal look is really hard to pull off, which I've talked about before, so I won't go all in on it. The minimal thing, again, I think the clothes were not only generally new, but also pretty expensive. I think a minimal look helps a lot if you have the body and the face and the money for it. And I just like the way I am. I'm not a very polished person. And so I'm not going to put contacts in every day. I'm not going to wear makeup every day. I'm not going to do my hair. In fact, I don't know how to do my hair. Whenever I go into the hairdresser, you should tell your hairdresser this if you don't style your hair, because they will cut it in a way that doesn't necessarily need to be styled. Just a tip. So that was, again, the barrier to that style, which I really liked. I loved that style. I wanted to emulate it. I thought it was going to be my forever thing. I was like trying to like, thrift COS. Like I won't even buy COS firsthand. That's how cheap I am. I was like thrifting COS. I was trying to like thrift the row, which was even the row secondhand is way too expensive for me. Trying to, find the things from La Mer secondhand. It was just kind of a mess. And every time I would get dressed, I would just add like a silly shoe or a scarf or just like something that took it out of that minimalist vibe. So again, my own natural instincts were going against the thing I purportedly wanted to do. And then on the archive fashion side, and these people I still feel like I am in community with, I have great respect for. And the thing I would say about that, because I was so close to going all in on that, is one, it still can be very expensive, but a lot of these people don't buy so many pieces. They have like relatively small wardrobes of archive designer pieces or vintage designer pieces. I think the thing that ultimately it came down to about why that didn't work for me is because I felt like I was pretending to be cool, and I don't ultimately feel good doing that. And I don't want people to come and be like, "Oh, but you are cool." But when I wore those clothes, I felt like I was pretending to be cool. And I don't have enough of a philosophy around why that was, but I just couldn't in good faith wear these like archive designer fits going to the grocery store or like going to see my family in Philly and like playing with my nieces and nephews. Like something just at the very base of it felt at odds with who I am or what I do. And that's not to say that these people don't do those things. I'm sure they have great relationships with their nieces and nephews, but it was like a mental block. It was a mental block when it came to that for me. So again, I have pieces from all these phases that are still in my wardrobe. Not a lot of them, but some of them I did wind up selling or giving away. But I have pieces from all of these phases of my life, and I still wear them, and I just incorporate them into my wardrobe, piece by piece, not in a full look sense. Okay, so that is a general overview of the different phases I tried and why I realized they didn't work for me. So the things I would think about for yourself, if you're not particularly going through these exact phases, is you want to really take into consideration how you like to feel in public, around your friends, around your family. Do you like to fit in? There is nothing wrong with fitting in. I swear to God, there is nothing wrong with dressing like the people around you. That is a perfectly legitimate way to dress and to have personal style. It's still personal style to dress the way other people do. Please believe me. Personal style does not equal individualism or uniqueness. So just think about that very legitimately. And if you're not sure, try it out. Wear something that's objectively weird. And maybe you like it, you like feeling other, you like the attention, all that is good. Or you feel like a little at odds. And to be honest, the way I dress is not like completely, it's not the same as the way most of my friends dress. It's not the way some of my family dresses. Like my family, we all dress a little bit different and a little bit the same at the same time. But there is still like a bridge I felt I was connecting to. There were some styles that felt like there was no connection. There was no overlap at all. And I think the way I dress now, there's still a little bit more of a connection that I have. There are times when I go to like really hip Brooklyn spaces and I do feel like I can't compete. But sometimes I don't want to compete because, again, competing, and I'm a very competitive person, competing like feels wrong. Like I don't want to be in the competition because if you're in the competition, that means that you can win or lose. And I don't even want a chance kind of looking. I know people don't think this way, but this is just how my brain works. I don't want to chance the failure. Like I'd rather dress in a way that I ultimately feel very personally comfortable with than dress in a way that I think will fit in a cool environment and then feel like a wannabe, if that makes sense. You just have to be really honest with yourself about these things, even if they're dumb, even if they feel silly, even if they don't feel like the thing you're supposed to do. It is the way you are ultimately. On the other hand, there were things that I did and sort of forced myself to try that worked. One of them was accessories. I've talked about this a little bit before. I was not very good at accessorizing, and I really took myself to school on accessories. Now, not all the accessories worked because I bought bracelets, I bought necklaces, I bought hats and sunglasses and rings and one watch or two watches, and some have stuck and some have not. Again, because I buy things secondhand and generally at low prices, I feel a little bit more relaxed about experimenting in that way. If you are experimenting, I highly, highly recommend buying things secondhand or borrowing things from friends. Doing a sort of like swap meet is always a good idea. So the necklaces didn't stick, sunglasses didn't stick. What has stuck are rings, this exact sort of ring setup, this one watch, which I really like. Unfortunately, the company has gone out of business. They gifted it to me and then they went belly up. Sorry about that. Because I don't wear sunglasses, I wear a lot of hats to shield my face from the sun. And so I have not even that many hats. I have like four or five hats. And that's all I need. I wear them all the time. And they feel like, especially my bright green hat, it feels like a calling card at this point, which is really nice. So that is an example of a thing in the negotiation that I was willing to compromise on. I was willing to compromise on some kinds of accessories. I was like, yes, I'll take the rings. Yes, I'll take the watch, right? And then finally the other ones I got, I had a weird hang up with the color brown for the longest time. I'm wearing brown glasses actually right now, if you can tell. So I sort of successfully allowed brown into my life. And that was through, again, adding things little by little, figuring out which types of clothes I liked that were brown. Oh, brown shoes. I also own now a lot of brown shoes, which I didn't have. And yeah, like getting them piece by piece, slowly, secondhand, seeing what felt good. And then I would get like one brown shoe and I'd be like, oh, I actually really like this. Then I would get a brown sandal so that I had a brown shoe and a brown sandal and I was using both. The last thing I really want to mention, and it's pulling back the curtain a little bit because even though I've talked a lot about being influenced by social media, and I think a lot of us are, obviously you're on YouTube, but when it comes to fashion and style, you're inundated with stuff you see online, on Instagram, on TikTok. And what was actually really toxic for me was not only ingesting that, but making fashion content because, like I said, I'm a very competitive person. And in my mind, I was like, it can't be that hard. If you just see what like a popular person on social media is wearing, just buy that and wear it, and then you'll like be successful on social media. And I had a full ass job at this point. Like social media was not my goal in life. To be honest, social media is still not my goal in life, but it's still a very worthwhile creative endeavor. However, me posting my outfits on social media and essentially commodifying them or like turning them into something for consumption, like I will show you this, you will give me views, was really negative for me in a lot of ways because I wasn't getting dressed thinking about what I liked and what I wanted to wear. I was trying to get dressed thinking about what viewers would like, what they would click on, what they would comment about. And that really did lead me astray. Obviously, a lot of people on here are not going to entirely be able to relate because you might not make TikToks or Instagram posts or whatever it is. But I do think that is a good thing to keep in mind because I think we do that in all realms of our life, right? You wear something because you are competitive with your friends or you're competitive with your loved ones or whoever it is, and you are worried about what people will think of you and how it'll like raise your social status. And that's partially why I don't post my fits so much anymore. I do it very selectively. And in some ways, I would rather post an outfit that's not realistic. Like, I don't do this again, but I would rather like play dress up online than like actually show you what I wear, because what I wear is like not that interesting. It's not that fancy. It's just very everyday. And I want to dress like that because that's how I feel most comfortable in my life. But it's not a great product for consumption. And so it's really important to separate those things, at least it was for me, which is the clothing you wear is not for consumption. The clothing you wear is for you to feel good in your life, right? That's how it should be. For me, that's what makes me feel the best. But this is a really hard experience, and it's a hard topic because, clothing, it's like, sometimes I'm like, we're all so obsessed with this, obviously me included, and it doesn't matter that much, but it does matter because what you wear says so much about you, it communicates so much about you, it gives people a certain impression of you, whether you want it to or not. And it also like just doesn't come that naturally. Like sometimes it does, or it does for some people, but having a personal style is not like, oh, you just have to tap into some inner fountain within yourself and it'll just spring forth. Like sometimes you really have to think very hard about what you want to wear and why you want to wear it and how you want to present yourself. And it might not be some beautiful, natural, organic process. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Like there's no right and there's no wrong, but there are things that you have to accept about yourself, I think, to go through that journey and come out of the other side understanding why you're making the choices that you are and being at peace with them, which is possibly the hardest thing to do. Because like, yeah, I wanted to be a baddie, There's still a part of me that wants to be a baddie. Am I ever going to be one? No, I'm not. I'm not. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But someone's got to do it. It's going to be me. Anyway, before you go, I have started a Patreon, which, as I learned, not everyone actually knows what a Patreon is. Maybe that's just like my one friend who isn't on social media and my parents. But it's essentially a way that you can support me and I will give you services and things back. So if you support my Patreon at a $3 level, you can get access to a bunch of my shopping maps. I have Google Maps that I save shopping locations for different cities, and we're working on a bunch of them actually, but my big ones are New York City and Paris, and then we're working on Chicago, London, Philly, Tokyo. There's a couple in the works. And so you'll have access to that. You'll have access to my brand shopping doc, which is where I organize all the brands I like, what I think they're good for, their price point, different notes, things I like to look for online secondhand, like on eBay. I have all sorts of different information in that Excel sheet. The $3 tier also gets you into a Discord full of hopefully like-minded people. And we are talking about anything from like recent pickups, styling issues that people have. Sometimes people just need help with certain issues. Someone like needed help on what size of loafer they should get, if they should size up or size down or whatever it was. And yeah, it's great to be able to chat with people in a kind, gentle, understanding community, which you can't always find online. And so that's the $3 tier. And then the $10 tier, I'm releasing extra video content. The video content that I have on the $10 tier is personal styling sessions that I do with my friends. So I have one friend, Serafina, where I'm helping her clean out her closet, think about where she wants her style to go. She's gone through some physical changes that she needs to address, and I think she just wants to mature into her style that she thinks she'll have for the next, 10, 20 years. I'm also trying to help my friend Caleb buy a pair of pants. Like literally he has one pair of pants, and he was like, Persia, please help me. I need to own more than one pair of pants. He really wants a pair of jeans. Jeans are so tough. But anyway, we're endeavoring. So you can watch those videos if you sign up for my Patreon. And obviously, thank you so much if you do that. I really appreciate it. I put myself out here when I make these videos. They're very personal, and it's great to also know that I can make and have this community on the back end that is kind and understanding and like wants to work on these issues for ourselves and others together.